National Dialogue Committee hits deadlock following disagreements over proposals to review taxation measures to lower cost of living, with only days left to deadline.
Government directs all employers to pay private security guards not less than 30,000 shillings as minimum pay as part of wider reforms to cater for their welfare.
The United Kingdom Supreme Court declares a plan to start sending refugees seeking asylum in UK to Rwanda as unlawful, saying the policy could be open to human rights breaches.
One more highlight, Harambee Stars face Gabon in their opening World Cup qualifier match tonight, and this will be the very first competitive match for Harambee Stars since that FIFA ban was lifted. Good morning, this is Morning Cafe. My name is Freddie Ndimuli. How hot is the coffee where you are? Remember our Christmas countdown, 39 days to Christmas.
Well, and I'm Flora Limuki. Great to have you here this morning. And of course, we do have a great show lined up for you this 16th day of November 2023. Of course, you can be part of this conversation by interacting with us at TV47 News on X, TV47 Kenya on Facebook. The hashtag is Morning Cafe.
Most definitely, and because it's a Thursday, as we always do every single Thursday, some relationship Thursday. It's a marriage, there's a man, there's a woman there. But what is the role of the man in this marriage? We'll be having that conversation.
One, really, eh?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I think we should be having tips from Fred as we continue.
I'm also waiting to learn.
I
also need to know probably the new roles that came up.
Exactly. Or the things we've not been doing.
Yes, no, we keep revising and amending our laws, so you never know.
Oh, yes, and that is the question of the day this particular morning. What is the role of a man in a marriage? Or even in a relationship? We'll be focusing on that. I'm yours truly, Stanley Nyeringita, but first, let's get the big story.
Top story now. The National Dialogue Committee has once again invited Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u to assist in facilitating consensus on the contentious issues. This is after a stalemate yesterday that prompted a walkout from the bipartisan talks by some representatives of the Azimio coalition. The team, which had retreated in Stony Athi to write its final report, is grappling with lack of consensus on how to lower the cost of living. The Azimio team is believed to have outlined 3 demands, including the scrapping of the housing levy and reduction in VAT on fuel prices. The disagreement has now forced the team to halt deliberations to allow for further consultations ahead of next week's deadline. Well, that's a top story this morning. Let's now take a look at the day's diary.
And on our day's diary this morning, we start with the Parliament buildings. The Justice and Legal Affairs Committee shall hold a meeting today with stakeholders to deliberate on the death penalty bills. I'll be meeting a number of stakeholders on the same. And from that, the Departmental Committee on Communication, Information and Innovation is scheduled to meet stakeholders from Kenya Revenue Authority, KRA, as well as the Competition Authority of Kenya on the inquiry into the review of mobile termination rates by the Communication Authority. Into matters sports now, what will be happening as of today. Fred had mentioned this. Harambee Stars will today face Gabon at the Stade de la Rénovation de Franceville in Gabon. And this is definitely going to be some huge bonuses if they win this particular game. Back in Kenya, the Talanta Hela Inter-County Football Tournament playoffs are expected to kick off today at the Moi Complex Primary in Nyeri. So 21 regional team playoffs will be participating Teams will be participating in these playoffs that culminate on the 22nd of December. Today is, even as we flip this diary with you, today is International Day for Tolerance. And back in 1996, the UN General Assembly invited UN member states to observe the International Day for Tolerance on this day, the 16th of November, with activities directed towards both educational establishments and the wider public. And well, in today in history, back in 2021, Islamic State claimed an attack at the heart of Uganda's capital on such a day after 3 suicide bombers killed 3 people. And in 1918, Hungary was proclaimed an independent republic, pardon me, following the break up of the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Well, let's now take a look at the dailies, and we start off with The Standard. Talks heat turbulence. That's the big headline on The Standard, the front page of The Standard this morning. National dialogue, the writing of the final report by the Ruto and Raila teams fly into headwinds after the groups clash over proposals to cut the cost of living, especially fuel-related taxes and the housing levy, with some Azimio members staging a walkout as committee took a break for further consultations. The story is on page 4, and it occupies a huge part of the front page. Faces of leader of Azimio, Raila Odinga, and the President, William Ruto, making it to the front page once again. A state of bipartisan talks, cost of living, talks on deadlock as committee whose mandate expires on Friday next week disagrees on some of the proposals to tackle the cost of living. Impasse comes less than a week after the committee concluded its talks. They're now going to seek advice, and even as the co-chairs insist that they're still progressing steadily. And that is a big discussion point this morning. Other highlights on the front page of The Standard. Scientists find 300,000-year-old stone tools. The story is on page 7. Even as charges for visiting museums go up. So these stone tools, you might not see them. If you need to see them, you might need to pay a little bit more than you've been paying up until now. Elsewhere, Raila fights a rise in ID charges. The opposition chief says increased charges on identity documents and a string of other enhanced levies are totally unacceptable. A story is on page 2. In the pullout, real estate want better returns from holiday home, make it simple. And NCPB starts buying maize from farmers. That story is on page 12 of The Standard. Let's look at the top strip, which gives an overview of other top stories on the inside pages. We start off with the private guards minimum pay set at 30,000 shillings. It's on page 6. Farms go green and get awards. That's in the business pages. On the international scene, UK's Wanda Asylum plan ruled illegal. And in sports, World Cup testers Stars face Gabon, and that is on the back page, page 40. It is time for Firat and Stars to walk the talk as they face Gabon in the opening World Cup qualifier match tonight. This will be Kenya's first competitive match since FIFA lifted suspension last November. And this story occupies the entire of the back page of The Standard. And those are the highlights in this newspaper today. Hopefully, Firat is the right engine for this team. Let's just see how far we can go.
That's a good one.
Pun intended.
That's a good one. Let's have a look at the Daily Nation and the top headline there on the Daily Nation. Raila moved jolts bipartisan talks, and a report writing retreat by members of the National Dialogue Committee ended prematurely yesterday after the opposition side introduced fresh demands, including the scrapping of housing levy, reduction of VAT on petroleum products, and zero rating of basic food items, but the government side refused to budge. That is a story covered extensively on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation. These are just some of the demands: to scrap the housing levy, reduce VAT on fuel from 16% to 8%, slash foreign and domestic travel budget by 30% to save 230 billion shillings annually, cut hospitality and office supplies budget between 25% and 30%, decongest prisons from 66,000 to established capacity of 32,000 to save 18 billion shillings annually. Reduce road maintenance levy charge to 5 shillings from 18 shillings per litre. Reduce petroleum development levy to 2.70 shillings from 5 shillings per litre. Zero rate basic food items. And finally, remove excise duty on locally published books and educational materials. Yes, those are just some of the demands from the Azimio side. Another story on the Daily Nation. I've never met Anne Njoroge, says a senior KRA official. And a senior KRA official yesterday denied ever meeting Ms. Anne Njoroge, who is claiming ownership of a 17 billion diesel consignment. As Energy Cabinet Secretary David Chirchir maintained that the businesswoman tried to use forged papers to hijack the fuel. Yes, and on the top strip of the Daily Nation, new regulations set minimum pay for security guards at 30,000. That is the story on page 2 of the Daily Nation. Away from that, employ 40,000 intern teachers on permanent terms. Kupet now tells TSC, and that is the story on the back page of the Daily Nation. Looking at what we have on the right strip of the Daily Nation, it turns running, ma'am. I love to see them win. And during Sunday's E10 International Marathon in Elgeyo Marakwet County, one woman caught the attention of many after she was caught on camera by Nation Sport photographer Jad Nyataya running alongside the eventual men's winner Luka Kiprop. That is a picture, beautiful picture of them there. That's stories on page 50 of the Daily Nation. Now the government spokesperson Isaac Mwaura says give Ruto time to fix economy. And the government spokesperson is asking Kenyans to give President William Ruto's administration 2 more years to stabilize the economy, as he defended the head of state's policies and foreign trips. Another story there, who against diabetes gets 1 billion shot in the arm. That is the story on page 21 of the Daily Nation. Looking at what we have on the back page of the Daily Nation, Kupet now wants state to review contracts for 40,000 interns. And in numbers there, 20,000 shillings is the amount of money that interns teaching in junior secondary schools are paid, while those in the primary section earn 15,000. Yes, and Samata Sports there. Retiring Kenyan 7-star Billy Odhiambo opens up on his struggles with injury career and his plans for the future. And that is what we have on the Daily Nation this morning.
All right, let's talk money matters now on Business Daily. Kenya shillings free fall, inflating foreign debt by 3 billion Kenya shillings daily. Business Daily goes on to say loan stock swells 20% since January, and weak currency adds 383 billion Kenya shillings in 4 months. We have the graph there, how the shilling has depreciated against the dollar from January 19th all the way to August 23rd, from 100 all the way to 151.34. That is, it matters economy. On the left strip, matters taxation. We have the photo there of Treasurer Sias Njuguna Ndung'u. They say drop in fuel beer usage to deny state 133 billion Kenya shillings. And just to give context to this story, the Treasury has raised fears of losing 133.5 billion Kenya shillings in projected revenue in the current financial year, following a drop in motor vehicle and fuel imports, as well as lower sales of beer, spirits, and cosmetics than earlier projected. Right, quite interesting. And if it's the fact that, well, it's the war against, not using, beer and all alcoholic drinks, or it's just people don't really have money anymore to buy the beer.
Also, whatever gains we were getting from Uganda importing fuel through Kenya will have to be factored in as well. Mm-hmm. They're looking more and more towards Tanzania. So we'll definitely be the losers in the end, to some extent. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And finally, on the right strip there. That ticker, matters economy. Safaricom tariff cut to cost taxman 2.5 billion Kenyan shillings. Matters companies, Bamburi sells 12 billion Kenyan shilling stake in Uganda unit. And finally, Nairobi suburbs post fastest land price surge in 4 years. And before we cross over, on the back page of Business Daily, there's a very interesting story there. How power bills have turned into a silent driver of inflation. So last month, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics showed 50 kilowatts cost 1,388.99 Kenyan shillings against 963.73 a year ago. That is in matters economy. So curiously, how much will they be costing, let's say 50 kilowatts, by next year?
Kimeumana tena. Ndio habari kuu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo.
I love that cue.
Yeah, I was wondering what's happening.
Wanachama watatu kati ya wanne wa Azimio wajiondoa kwenye kikao cha maridhiano. Mashauriano kati ya Rais William Ruto na kinara upinzani Raila Odinga yamegonga ukuta, hali inayotishia kusambaratisha kabisa mazungumzo hayo endapo jopo la Bomas halitafikiana kwenye kikao kingine Jumatano. Wanaazimio waliripotiwa kutoa masharti mapya jana. Habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa pili wa Taifa Leo. Vidokezo vingine kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo: Gachagua aonya wahandisi feki. Kwingineko, onyo kuhusu nyama ya punda jijini. Na katika masuala ya kimataifa, Waisraeli wavamia hospitali. Habari zingine pale juu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo: ashtakiwa kuua familia ya kakake. Polisi wanasa aliyedaiwa kumuua mke wa kaka yake pamoja na wanawe wawili. Habari yenyewe kwenye ukurasa wa pili. Na habari hii ambayo imeendelea kupewa kipaumbele kwenye gazeti kadhaa: serikali ya mkana aliyedai kuagiza mafuta ya shilingi bilioni 17. Waziri wa uchukuzi Kipchumba Murkomen ametaja sakata ya mafuta ya thamani ya shilingi bilioni 17 ambayo Bi Njeri adai umiliki wake kuwa hekaya za Abunwasi. Hizo ndizo habari kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Kimeumana tena.
I just love the editor for Taifa Leo.
From Kenya sihami tena to kimeumana.
Let's have a look at the People Daily this morning, and the headline there: White will be hard to oust governors. And days after Meru MCA sought to kick out Kawira, they and others of like mind will find the going tough if new bill proposed by Kiambu Senator Karungo Dhangwa there is passed into law. And that is the story on page 7 of the People Daily. Just trying to get a snippet of what the new bill seeks to caution governors from removal, and it will become more difficult if the new bill is passed. The county government removal from the Procedure Bill 2023 seeks to put in place a legal framework for the removal from office by way of impeachment of county officials. And that is the big headline on the on the People Daily this morning. Other stories on the People Daily: and yes, just a clarification, what the MCAs in Meru are seeking is a petition to impeach the CECs, contrary to some reports yesterday that it's a third motion. It's a third impeachment motion that cannot happen if it's not even 3 months after the last impeachment motion happened.
But curiously, I mean, I hear they're in Mombasa, so they really have to...
What are they planning? A third impeachment motion?
Interesting time.
Yeah. In Meru, tunataka maombi, please pray for us. Away from that, on the top strip, Raila will fight a bid to charge fees for IDs. And that is what the Azimio leader Raila Odinga now says. That's the news bit on page 4 of the People Daily. Some matter sports: World Cup, huge bonus if Stars beat Gabon today, and all the best to the boys. On the last strip of the People Daily, new push to raise basic pay for guards, and Wanga leads campaign against malaria in Home of Untold. Yes, that is what we have on the People Daily this morning.
Let's take a look at the Star, and the big story is security dossier exposes cost of Azimio protests. They continue to say it is an insecure nation and the economy lost 3.1 billion Kenyan shillings every time demo staged. Kenya could have lost nearly 50 billion Kenyan shillings between March and July. It is on pages 4 and 5. And at the bottom there, they have a photo of Azimio leader Raila Odinga with the Dagoretti North MP Beatrice Elachi, Nairobi Women Rep Esther Passaris, and MP Tim Wanyonyi during a meeting yesterday in Westlands with the Luhya religious leaders. Other stories on the front page of the Star: Matters Education on the right strip. KCSE storm, Kisii lawmakers claim unjust profiling. And just to read a brief of that, MPs from Kisii community have come to the defense of students in the region and accused the Examinations Council of unduly profiling the region. The lawmakers said the cases of irregularities being reported in Kisii and Nyamira counties are blown out of proportion and plotted to undermine the education CS. Below there, 9 more killed as floods wreak havoc in counties, and state proposes plan to increase guards' wages. Finally, at the top scroll, we have the photo of a gentleman who nowadays it is rare to see him on any of these front pages, unlike last year during the general elections. I'm talking about the former IEBC chair, Wafula Chebukati. They have him there. And they say no regrets. Technology can't cure impunity in Kenyan elections, Chebukati now says. You can read that on page 2. And that, in a nutshell, is the front page of the Star. I believe that's a cue to cross over to Uganda.
Yes, let's cross over to neighboring countries and see what's headlining there. We start off with Uganda and a look at the Daily Monitor. Mark to verify degrees of its working alumni. Forgery fears the country's premier institution of higher learning. Oh, Mark is Makerere, if you didn't know. And they call it Mark.
It's not MacBook.
The country's premier institution of higher learning has asked all employers and higher education institutions to submit academic documents of its alumni for fresh verification amid fears of rising cases of forgery. And that's a big news in Kampala, Uganda today. Other headlines on the front page of the Daily Monitor: Church clears Chabazinga wedding. And scientists decode why grasshoppers are a no-show. I think they were expecting an invasion of grasshoppers. On the top strip, UN harboring terrorists, says Museveni. And yes, those are the highlights that we, at least in Kenya, can understand from our neighbors Uganda. The Daily Monitor retailing at 2,000 Uganda shillings in Kampala. That's 107 Kenya shillings.
Naam, tuangazie gazeti la Mwananchi kule Tanzania na taarifa kuu pale: utata matibabu bure wajawazito, kifo cha mjamzito Handeni aliyedaiwa kuomba 150,000 ili atibiwe cha waibua wanawake wengi wadai kulipishwa fedha kubeba vifaa wanapokwenda kujifungua kinyume na sera. Na taarifa nyingine katika gazeti la Mwananchi pale juu: mambo muhimu ya kuzingatia kwa usalama na afya yako, na shilingi milioni 4 kila kaya kuondoka jangwani. Naam, na tukiangazia upande wa kulia wa gazeti la Mwananchi: ziara zangu zinawatisha wanaotaka urais mwaka 2025. Na kando na hayo, sababu wenye kipato kidogo kuongoza kwa ndoa za mitala nchini. Naam, na hizo ndizo taarifa kuu katika gazeti la Mwananchi. Nafikiria hapa na najiuliza, kweli ndoa za mitala ni gani hizi? Yeah.
All right. On the front page of The Citizen, it's not as busy as normal. 3 main stories there. The big story is revealed soft underbelly of family businesses in East Africa. So family-owned businesses are an important pillar of industry across East Africa, but many face an uncertain future because they lack solid succession plans, according to experts. And they quote $15 million. That's nearly 20% of Tanzanian farms with revenues of more than $15 million annually. Family-owned, a new report has revealed. Just below that, an interesting story, not only for Tanzania, but also for Kenya. Do's and don'ts as dark skies open up, with the Tanzanian Meteorological Authority having focused 4 more consecutive days of heavy rain in Dar es Salaam and other regions. Experts and local government authorities have outlined measures that can help to keep people safe. That is on page 2. And they have some quotations there of people from that meteorological authority. And finally, on the top strip, matters education. Stakeholders in fresh efforts to bridge employability gap. That is on page 3. And well, that wraps up the cartoon review. I can see, Fred, you have the Daily Nation there. And
yes, the cartoon on the Daily Nation is on page 17. The one on the Standard is on page 14. Well, let's start off with the Standard. We have an image there of a DCI inside some very big shoes that looks like big police boots. But with the tag that those are thugs speaking to the media. I don't know why I'm a bit slow in trying to figure out what it means today.
But it reminds me of yesterday's post by DCI saying, well, they'd caught some suspects in some, money laundering, some hold money fraudulent scheme. But then they mentioned, and right now it's actually trending on X, $439 US.
Trillion US.
Trillion, actually, yes. 439 trillion US. And so Kenyans were
mind-boggling numbers. So don't make sense.
Yes. So Kenyans were really having their calculators and trying to calculate.
Yeah. But back to the cartoon, I think it's a struggle by this DCI to fit
DCI,
into shoes that were left behind by the previous team. Well, that's it. The Standard.
Yeah. It's, and I like the admin of the DCI X page. It's quite interesting. Yeah, correct. Just reminds me of that Mtungi with the money that was allegedly recovered from the Quickmart money. Yeah, and the cartoon on the Daily Nation speaks largely on the current push and pull between the CS for transport and also the senator for Nandi there. And this is the whole issue of the leaks of the rains in JKIA over the weekend. The CS says it wasn't me, and I think by now we have one song that will cue in on Friday. It wasn't me by Shaggy. Yeah, yes. It appeared during Kawira Mwangaza's impeachment motion.
I think it had more to do with the dragging of Uhuru into all this discussion.
Yes.
So the CS said it wasn't me, it was Uhuru's administration that should be blamed for what's happening at the JKIA.
Blame the Jubilee administration once again. And interesting enough, there's a committee that has been formed actually to probe that issue. And I'm wondering, what are we really probing? Is it the rains? Or
just fix the problem. Forget about probing it. We know what the problem is.
Exactly.
I think we've become experts on what exactly ails Kenya.
Yeah.
The problem now is who's going to fix it. That's the issue.
Yeah. Because within 28 days, yes, you get that report, but the heavy rains are continuing, and this is a situation you're likely to see even during any other day over the week.
Oh, yes.
So instead of fixing there and then, we're again forming committees to probe into heavy rains, surely.
And the whole sector that really needs fixing, even as we're speaking of the same, is on matters electricity. That forms on page 10 of People Daily. According to Stano, the common mwananchi there, taking a look at a candle and saying this candle is branded Kenya. It used to be Kenya Hakuna Matata. Now it's Kenya Hakuna Matata. And well, in the recent weeks and days, there has been electricity outages in different parts of the country. So yeah, I think at this time you're really, expecting you and your charger there, and mostly people like Lemuki with iPhones, you're always ready to have your phone at 100% at all times.
Get a power bank, lifesaver.
All right, and those are the dailies this morning. Interesting headline, especially on the National Dialogue Committee. We'll be looking at these headlines and a lot more with my panel after the break. This morning, we are hoping to have Justina Omai, politician and analyst, Beatrice Gambo, Jubilee Deputy Party Leader, Njeri Maina, that's the Kirinyaga woman representative, and the MP for Dagoretti North, Beatrice Elachi. Do stand by for this conversation with us on our social media pages, on X at TV47 News, and on Facebook, TV47 Kenya. You're watching Morning Cafe. We're privileged to have on set Justina Omai, politician, political analyst, former presidential running mate in the 2022 election. Always a pleasure to have you in studio. Next to Justina, we do have Njeri Maina, Kirinyaga woman representative. Karibu sana, good to have you in studio. Our third panelist this morning, Beatrice Gambo, Jubilee Deputy Party Leader. You'll be telling us more about which wing of Jubilee we are talking about. Tunajua kuna shida nyingi kule.
Asante.
We have a fourth seat here, and Beatrice Alachi, MP Dagoretti North, will be joining us shortly. Now, let's start off with what is headlining on the main dailies today, and that's to do with the National Dialogue Committee and the stalemate that has now occurred. Matters of cost of living have been a contentious issue. Initially, when this discussion started, people said that the cost of living, probably this was not the best forum to address it. It would appear that with only a few days left to the deadline, even as the team retreats to write its report, that this cost of living issue will be hitting our headlines for the next 1 week. Proposals are there, especially on the front page of the Daily Nation. They've broken down some of the proposals, scrapping the housing levy, mainly from the Azimio side, reducing VAT on fuel from 16% to 8%, slashing foreign travel budget by 30%, hospitality budget by 30%, decongesting prisons, reducing road maintenance levy to 5 from 18, reduce petroleum development levy to 2 shillings 70 cents, down from 5 shillings and 40 cents. Zero rating of basic food items, and removing excise duty on locally published books and educational material. And for the very first time, we are talking about tangible proposals that the Azimio team has come up with. Justina, this is a conversation we should have been having all along. The main point of this discussion was to lower the cost of living.
The problem of this country, Fred, is that we want to continue doing politics so much later, even after the election. Because we're wondering, it's been, I think, 3 months they've been there. Kenyans have also been complaining about budgets, though they say they don't have a budget. So what have they been doing all along? It's a good thing they're giving tangible ideas, but from where I sit, I think they're just trying to prolong the political angle of it. If they were genuine, if they love the country, they would have given us these proposals earlier on. But notwithstanding, we have 1 more week to go. So if they can agree, why not? But I think from where government sits, government is saying that almost 1.8 trillion of the money they're collecting is going to debt repayment. And remember, we are collecting around 2.1 trillion. Meaning salaries will be a problem if it comes to this. But again, I'm challenging the government. If the controller of budget has told us that the money cannot be traced to any project, please go after the people who took the money. I mean, you're not a toothless bulldog. Go after them, make them pay, instead of forcing ordinary Kenyans to pay for a debt that they have not felt any impact on.
Okay. Jerry Maina, some of this proposal would require a revisiting of the Finance Act that you, as members of the National Assembly, passed a few months back. MPs have been criticized for failing the country in controlling the cost of living by passing that. And it will come back to Parliament if at all this could be reviewed. Do you think that Parliament has conducted itself well on this issue of cost of living?
The first thing is that there's a conversation even on the global platform in terms of the fuel prices, which have escalated the cost of living because it cascades down to production and service provision. And I see it is a big ask here because they're asking that the VAT on fuel is reduced from 16% to 8%. And that is really requesting or pushing for us to have the subsidy program again. If I remind Kenyans, the subsidy program run by the previous government is being paid for by the Kenya Kwanza government at a cost and a tune of about more than 45 billion Kenya shillings. And that is a cost that the taxpayer has to pay at the end of the day. Because like I've said several times, the government does not have its own money. So if we reduce this, and we already have a debt issue at hand, we already have money that is due by June this year. These will only cascade and escalate the issue further and just push the problem forward. It is not fixing it. So some of these issues, yes, I do agree that maybe perhaps the zero rating on basic food items, excise duty on locally published books, but some things which are critical, like that can be done. And Parliament has really conducted itself alive to the fact that we are in a debt crisis, and that has to be resolved for the longevity of a tangible solution.
Okay. And even as we continue this discussion, I'd like to invite Beatrice Elachi to just walk into the set. The seat is already reserved for you. You can just join us as we continue with this conversation. But Kenyans, looking at this discussion, even in the passing of the Finance Act, we are made to believe that some of these provisions are not simply phrases, that they're actually meant for something. One of the proposals is about the housing levy. If at all we are in such a bad situation as a country, don't you think that some of these ambitious plans, and I'll direct this question to Beatrice Gambo, don't you think that the government would have gone slow on some of these ambitious plans, like the affordable housing project, hence, for now at least, remove the housing levy as demanded by the Azimio team?
Thank you, Fred. Priorities is what this government needs to sit back and have a look. What are Kenyans saying? This government needs to listen to what Kenyans are saying. And this conversation that, well, people are saying it as the talks have hit a turbulence, is a conversation that has been happening for the longest time, to a point that we as Azimio went to the streets. We had maandamano for the longest time. And when we were in the streets, in fact, my Secretary General, Mheshimiwa Kioni, was wearing a sufuria, and people were laughing about it. We would go to Kamkunji, would be tear gassed, and we were actually passing a message to the government and telling them, hey, look, this, whatever you are doing right now, is going to get to a place where it is going to be so difficult for Kenyans to even afford a meal, leave alone two, on their tables. It's going to get to a place where it's going to be very difficult for parents to keep their children in school. It is going to be very difficult for parents to even, just take care of the basics that are actually enshrined in the Constitution. And that's exactly where we are, Fred. And we are saying as Azimio, yes, we stopped doing the maandamano. We said, let's give talks a chance. And the top agenda item that we had was lowering the cost of living. And we said, okay, fine, let's continue, hoping that in the process of having these talks in Bomas, something is going to happen. But nothing has happened. In fact, it has actually moved from bad to worse. Okay? When we are actually saying that stop these foreign trips, just stop. Let's talk, Stop these fuel guzzling purchases, guzzler purchases. Let's have a conversation. And we are told, you just talk. You are, in any case, you're opposition. You just do a lot of talking. Just keep talking. Now, we have sat down as Azimio and presented very specific areas and said these areas, and by the way, they are not unrealistic. They are very, very realistic. And the whole conversation started around the Finance Bill or Finance Act 2023.
But Beatrice Elachi, karibu sana to the panel, MP Dagoretti North. Leaving it to only a week to the deadline, and this is after that 30-day extension to discuss the cost of living, definitely speaks a lot about the agenda of this National Dialogue Committee. So much has been conversed, so much has already been agreed on. Yet 1 week to the end of this period is when we are seeing walkouts from some representatives of Azimio, and this is when they're talking about things that really matter to Mwananchi. Was this forum misplaced from the word go?
Well, I don't think it was misplaced. First, thank you and good morning. For me, I think when they started, we had many people presenting their memorandums, And I think one of the key things, and many Kenyans kept on reminding us, that as you go to this discussion, in fact, those other things you're discussing, the main important thing to discuss is the high cost of living, which I think every Kenyan agrees with that. And for me, when I look at what we have presented now, and one thing I always believe in is that, which I listened to what our majority leader said, and Kalonzo Musyoka, our principal, said, that they will call in Treasury. So it's up to Treasury how it packages this. I don't think they are saying we are walking out of the talks. We were with Baba yesterday. He was very clear. It means he means well for the country. He would want to see good things for the country. He understands the country is hurting. I know many people are saying, Baba, come out. We are saying, Baba, no. This is a pillar that we must sit down, all of us, without looking at, and get a solution. And so if there are leaders who believe that Kenya is hurting, then they must give us these solutions, all of them. Because it's now within their purview. It's the president, the prime minister, the former vice president, all of them are principals there. We want to see them coming together and give us now a solution. What I've always said, and what I always feel very disappointed with, is the team that converses to work on this economic pillar within government. And I've always said, if they want to really bring out what Kenyans are saying, they cannot be working. Some talk from State House, they talk very differently. The ones in Treasury who understand, who have been there, who are with all the documents, are talking from another angle. They must also come together and stop sabotaging each other and now say, yes, we can reduce this to safeguard and pay this. We can pay our debts.
But there's a question to be asked about the role of Parliament, of which you are a member of. Some of these proposals would necessitate a revisiting of the Finance Act that you passed as a House. I do not know how you voted, but there's a lot to be said about the conduct of Parliament in this process. You cannot escape blame in getting us to the situation we are in right now.
Well, I'm not a leader who refuses blame. I take blame as Parliament because Kenyans give us the powers of the past. And so even the president can come out and say, it was not me. I gave it to Parliament. They decided to do it that way. Yeah, he will go to Kenyans, and at one point that's what he will say. So it's us of Parliament who the Constitution have given that power to do budgets, to review budgets, to look at budgets. That it's up to us now to sit down as Parliament. I know, I voted no because of two reasons. I really begged, and I know I went to all media houses begging that this thing of the housing levy, we must think through, and yes, we can put it in the finance bill, but do not start just immediately. Give it a period of 2 years, and then it matures. At that time, you'll see how the country is, and we agree or we disagree. But I know numbers speak, so I lost on that one. And so we can still rethink and work around it. For now, if you do this now, we will lose money. We will lose money on this way. We've already taken a lot of money of Kenyans, a lot. Nobody has even told us how much is it. So if you come and reduce, people will take advantage. So it's not about taking it back to 8%. For me, I would say, give it at, if we want, we get to know how much is it, and it's brought to Parliament that so far Kenyans have paid this, and we can leave it to mature at this time and revisit it and come.
Okay.
That is one. When I look at the issue of, I've always said, one of the things that people don't know, which I learned a lot when I was a CAS in government, all these things we talk about, it's not the problem. The day Treasury will give us an itemized budget is the day we come out of corruption.
Okay.
And it's the day you'll realize
I agree.
whether you go to abroad, that is not the problem. The problem is there are so many things that
Hidden
we put
within the
into budgets, and you even institutions you pay for. But if you really look at those institutions, you can't see them, but you are told they are paid salaries. Some are just given salaries. You don't even know what do they do when they are being paid salaries. So it's a matter of how we look at all this.
Talks hit turbulence. That's a headline on The Standard. Raila move jolts bipartisan talks. It's the biggest talking point this morning, and that's what we've been discussing with my panelists on State of the Nation. We're just about to take a break. When we come back, we want to delve into matters, politics of parties. And it's interesting that I can see various colors represented on this panel. I don't know which parties, and I don't know which party you're representing, those colors. even Justina and green. This is curious, but at least I can tell that in Jerry Minor, that yellow is... represents a certain party, and also Beatrice Gamba looks like Jubilee Party.
Absolutely.
So we'll be talking about the politics of party, even as we look forward to what's going to happen in December with that anticipated grassroots elections by UDA. That after the break. You're watching Morning Cafe. Remember, you can continue interacting with us on social media at TV47 News on X and TV47 Kenya on Facebook. This is TV47. You're watching Morning Cafe with me, Fred Ndimuli. I'm in studio with Beatrice Elachi, MP Dagoretti North, Justina Omai, politician and political analyst, Beatrice Gambo, Jubilee Deputy Party Leader, and Jerry Minor, Kirinyaga Woman Representative. Let's start with you, Beatrice Gambo, because we want to talk about party politics. And I've just described you as a Jubilee Deputy Party Leader. There's a lot of confusion in that description. We still do not know what the true position is in as far as Jubilee is concerned. Kindly clarify that for us.
I don't know what clarification is needed here. There's no confusion. The party leader of Jubilee is His Excellency Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Okay, and it's a very fair question, because you go to a meeting and people are like, "Uko Jubilee gani?" There's only one Jubilee, and the party leader is His Excellency Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Okay. Our Secretary General is Honorable Jeremiah Kioni.
I think that clarifies it.
Yeah, so it's clear.
We know which Jubilee we're dealing with.
Yeah, so this is a Jubilee you're dealing with. So when you see all this movement, in fact, I was actually telling someone, there's something called fidelity in multi-party democracy. People died in this country fighting for the repealing of Section 2A, okay? To say now Kenya needs to be a multi-party democracy so that we can enjoy people in government, opposition, and out of that sprouted so many political parties. So when you get to a point where a party, a nominated MP in Jubilee, waking up in the morning, getting ready, and goes and sits in a Kenya Kwanza parliamentary group meeting, then there's a serious problem. That's a big problem because that is wrong. When somebody wakes up in the morning, writes a letter, okay, and says, I'm the chairman of Jubilee, I am calling for a meeting, yet he has just been appointed as a director in a parastatal, and the Political Parties Act 2011 is very clear that if you hold a political party position, a position in a political party, and you get an appointment in government, you have to relinquish one. So you can not hold to chairmanship of Jubilee, and at the same time you are a director in a parastatal paid by the taxpayers. You know, it is completely out of order.
And we'll come back to that discussion because the UDA has already communicated that chairs of boards and directors will be allowed to vie for party positions come December 9th. But on this issue of, allow me to call it lack of hygiene in politics, especially in the conduct and management of political parties, a lot has changed. Despite the fact that we talk about the Political Parties Act that has gone through a lot of amendments to improve it, the kind of behavior we're seeing now, Justina, is very different from what we saw in the 90s. Back then, if you moved from one party to another and you are already an elected member of parliament, then you would have to go back and seek a fresh mandate. We've seen that that has totally been forgotten, and now it is not even possible for a party to punish errant members. Where did we go wrong?
I think time has changed how we do things. When you look at the Labour Party, the Conservatives, they have the right-wingers, they have the centrists, they have the left-wingers. All of them in one party accommodated. Where we've gone wrong is that political parties do not allow individual thinking or individual way of life. There are things I think political parties should do that even if I join this political party, ask me, Justina, what are you going to vote in line with the party position or in line with your conscience? You know, I'm still an individual. Whether if I'm in Jubilee, for example, and I don't believe in violence and mandamano, that is my conscience. So allow me to have the space to think that, you know what, yeah, you guys, if you believe in violence, that's okay, and I respect you. But also respect the fact that I can decide to go for mandamano or not. But let me say the tragedy is that political parties over time, money has always been spent in politics. So Kenyans see a politician or a political party as a way of making money. So Kenyans will never invest in political parties. Kenyans will never want to, they just want to milk and milk and milk. And that is why politicians and people who own political parties will end up investing as if it's a business. Obviously, Fred, you'll want your return on investment. So even if you're saying that, even if you come to my party, I'll try to remind you, you know what, Fred, I've invested in this party, this is what I want to do. So the hygiene gets lost in the fact that the public, the general public or the general Kenyan or the ordinary Kenyans will not invest in political parties. So they have no stake, they have no voice in how the political party will go.
And it's curious that you use the word my political party.
Yes.
The understanding is that all these political parties are funded by the taxpayer, meaning that generally some ownership should emanate from the general public. This is the understanding. And for a very long time, we've always felt that parties belong to the party leader, who's at will to shut down the party, dissolve the party, move on with the party, call for elections, appoint people instead of having them go through elective processes. Is this what the UDA is trying to remedy, Njeri?
You know, we have the idealism and we have the factual situation. And the unfortunate factual situation in Kenya is that we lack fidelity in our political parties, and that we lack institutional memory, because political parties oftentimes, they're just vehicles to move you from point A to B. And case in point, the oldest parties in Kenya, like KANU, you know, people, it's like they just wait for the next election to shift to another political party. Even the former president, the first time he vied on TNA, the second time was on Jubilee, right? And the current president vied under UDA party. So you can see that we have a trend where we lack parties that are built on ideology. Like perhaps in the developed nations, you know, we have the right wing, the left wing, we have the Democratic Party, Republicans. So if you're joining a party, you really know what informs you to join that party. You know that they have a long history in a particular way of thinking or particular ideas. So that is what we lack in Kenya. And that is what the UDA party is trying to build on. Will it succeed? That is yet to be seen, because, I mean, time will tell.
Are you confident enough that there could be success come December 9th? I'm
a very rational person. It is 50-50. And I do not, my personal opinion on the elections, I do not support us having party elections on December 9th, because, I mean, the current situation of the country as we speak, right? And I have, as a member of parliament and a representative of the people of Kirinyaga County, I have chosen to just, you know, take a step back and just watch.
So you'll not be taking part in?
I will not be taking part in the elections on 9th, but as an elected member, I am going to be in the entire lineup.
Okay.
Because that is the party constitution provisions. But at the end of the day, we really have to look at our priorities. And I do not think the priority for the UDA party is to hold elections on 9th of December.
Yet this skepticism about fixing what ails us in as far as political party management is concerned could be the remedy to a bigger political issue. Yourself, Beatrice Elachi, you've moved from one party to another. I remember that famous video in State House when the Mbas party dissolved, and you were, I think, the only lady among so many gentlemen there. You've been to that party, you moved to TNA, and now you're with ODM. You served even under Jubilee at some point. What informs this? Is it that none of these parties is strong enough to sustain a membership beyond one election cycle?
I think I want to just write on what Njeri has said, because that is how political parties are. And remember, women are never allowed to form their own political party, because that is the day we will have parties that will just be there as strong. Oh, sure. Yeah.
Charity Ngilu had a party back in the 90s.
No,
she vied for presidency.
Yes,
that party.
That time. Now we changed. We say, oh, you have... Fine, I can be a party leader as a woman, but then you see, if I want my members to be women so that you just give them a platform without taking them through a lot of madness, and we see how they vie, you will not find. And will Kenyans even appreciate that is another issue. But having said that, don't forget ODM has been very consistent in moving, and I think Baba realized, because even when you look at how we do it, it's a way of managing the party, not to find yourself in breakages so much. So you realize from 2005, Baba has managed in a way, he will be very, because he's the party leader, he will decide this one can go direct ticket. So within the constitution though, because the constitution of ODM allows, you look at opinions, you can give a direct ticket, based on popularity, that's what they say, or you are taken to a nomination and all that. And he has managed to hold on that. But I think if he had let it freely, that people can just go and participate, he would have very different results. And I think sometimes people complain about it, but then the most important thing of political, and I agree with Jerry, as much as I'm not in UDA, is that you cannot do an election when we are talking of high cost of living. Exactly. I don't know what. And you are doing it in December, when in January, parents are thinking how their children are going back to school. You have money for an election. It doesn't go down so well. But at the same time, in December, when we are going to Christmas, you want people to strangle each other, because they will strangle each other because of these positions. That is why sometimes you look at, and it's not just in Kenya, I think it's all, it depends on how we do it. But the parties, when you look at how ANC also runs its party, and you look at CCM, there are issues. But the good thing, because of having a long term, in terms of holding for many years, people have come to embrace, they appreciate the regulations and rules of the party, and they follow those rules to the latter. So maybe why we have this problem, ever since we went into multipartism, we have never been so serious. Even the principles themselves. Today you are in this party, so I have been in the Mbas. Then I moved to Jubilee when we killed the Mbas. Then I moved out and went to ODM. So those are the parties I have been in. And the reasons are the way our parties are structured. How I wish they would be just national parties, you know, without looking at regional or... But you see, our parties are very regional, very tribal. They hold very strong roots into tribalism. Okay. And that is what makes us now, you have to go. And as a woman, if you want to win, first thing you must always ask yourself, which political party are you joining in? From which region are you?
Okay, but I'm concerned about what Njeri Maina said, that her skepticism about getting involved in the process on December 9th. If at all herself and many others feel the same way, because I know that Women Congress for UDA expressed the same kind of skepticism. If women fail to take part in this process, then the party goes ahead and does it. Then the women in UDA will have missed out on ownership of this party. Don't you see that as a risk, Justina?
I think we have to go back to when you're founding the party. Fred, we have 90 political parties in this country. And the parties that are getting political parties fund, you either got 5% of the vote or you have some, members in terms elected leaders. So remember, there are others that never got funding. Where are they getting their operational money? From an individual, from somebody who wants to sponsor that party. So it comes off as a business. And maybe we're supposed to change how, if we want to foster democracy, maybe you should change how we fund political parties. Should it be government funded from their own set, so that there is no implication of I own this party? Look at UDA. Probably when they started, who contributed money as a woman for that conversation? I'm sure the president has the goodwill, but there are people behind the funding. There are people who are pushing this conversation. So even if women expressed here that our voice is that we do not want the election, but were you there part of the funding? Did you contribute? And remember, even the president had promised women, I think 50-50 cabinet, but I think he was torn by the fact that more men had contributed towards the campaign. And I'm not saying women, we don't have money, but you know who are the owners of capital? They are the men. So your voice will get lost in terms of, were you part of the founding? What was your contribution? And sadly to say, in this country, women were seen as a top-up option. Uko na mama wangapi hapo? 5. And what are they saying? 1/3. So out of 15, 5 are there. You have the flower girls are there.
Don't you see the risk, if you fail to be involved in this process, that you might just be left out and to be on the fringes of the party?
No, I will not be left out, because by dint of the fact that I am an elected representative at the county level, I will sit at the party. UDA is holding grassroots elections. So they're going to be from the polling station level. So it's going to be around 22 elected positions per ward. We have 20 wards in Kirinyaga County. What I have said is, and what I have expressed is that I feel that it is not the right time to conduct grassroots party elections because of the high cost of living. And I know, because I speak to my people. I was in Kirinyaga the day before yesterday. So I know the mood of the ground, and I know that people feel the priority right now is not to hold grassroots elections, where now you have maybe perhaps your previous polling agents asking you to sponsor them for elections. And, elections, money spent on elections. I mean, we have other priorities that we could focus on as a government, even just to show goodwill in the conversation about the cost of living.
Okay. If at all the cost of living was not an issue, political party hygiene would be one of those solutions to the kind of political upheaval we experience. The involvement of women in political party ownership or management or running of political parties should be more than just the piecemeal appointments they're given. In such instances like the one in UDA, this is probably the best time for women to get involved from the grassroots level. Don't you think that women will be missing out because they've already expressed their reluctance to take part? And this was a public discussion at the Women Congress for the UDA. I'm just giving the UDA as an example because the elections are coming sooner. Every other party would benefit from the same. Don't you think that women will be missing out?
Fred, that's a very good question. But again, I will, and I agree with what Njeri has said. What are the priorities of this government? Because UDA is government, okay? And right now, everyone is crying about the high cost of living, and they're saying, whatever you say, we are not listening to your high cost of living. What is important for us is 2027, so we need to do these grassroots elections. There was a meeting that happened in Mombasa, an UDA meeting, and it turned chaotic. Now I'm imagining a meeting turning chaotic. What happens when they're having the elections? And I mean, there's hope. Because if you look at what we've done in what we are doing in Jubilee, there's actually, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Because we said we have to clean house. We have to make sure that we restore fidelity in the party. And that's how Mheshimiwa Mwenje has come in now and taken a position in the House leadership. Because we said he's been consistent. He understands that he's in Jubilee. He knows what Jubilee stands for. And therefore, this is the person, and he has been consistent. This is the person that needs to be there and not Mheshimiwa Sabina. Because he understands who took him to Parliament, how he got to Parliament, and that he needs to stand to what Parliament says. Having said that, I had an opportunity to visit the US on a leadership program. And it was during the 2012 President Obama re-election. And I got to sit with leaders in different states. And you sit with the Democrats in Florida. He speaks the same way as a Democrat in Washington. The same way with the other one in Miami. Why? Because they understand this is what the party stands for. And we actually look at America and some of these developed countries, and we look at their democracies and says, oh, we need to borrow a leaf from here and there, which is true. So we need to sit back and look at what we stand for as parties, so that you don't get somebody taking a different position because they feel and their emotion tells them, directs them to take a different position. If we say as Azimio that we are voting no for the finance bill, then we vote no for the finance bill. You don't come out in another caucus and say we think, we feel. We don't feel and think. We have to take a position, and it is a factual position that is actually has been analyzed by our economists, and we say that this is the position and this is what is good for Kenyans. So I agree with Njeri. I mean, you cannot go and do grassroots elections when people don't even know how the kids are going to go to school in January. Okay. When people don't even have jobs. You should see Kenyans walking and talking to themselves, and you think they have an earpiece. They're talking to somebody on phone. There's no earpiece. They don't know whom to talk to anymore.
Okay. And you, Beatrice Elachi, you give the example of CCM, a neighboring Tanzania. We don't have to go far.
Yeah.
A party that has sustained its membership and its stronghold on power for decades. Probably look at ANC as well in South Africa. Even the EFF in South Africa looks like it has better identity than any of the parties in Kenya. Is it possible to go back to days when parties had proper identity beyond the party leader? Because even for ODM, the assumption is that if Raila Odinga was to cede ground and leave the party's leadership position, that would be the end of the party.
Oh, yes. Oh, that one is very true. It will be the end of the party. But then, that's why I said the way we decided to have this culture of building parties, it has to stop. And you don't need to force because, you see, it's a willing thing. What ideology do you believe in must guide you to which political party you should go. That's why these other parties, they survive, because they have their ideology, what they believe in, whether you want to believe in socialism, whether you want to believe in being a realist, a capitalist, and that's how the American parties work. They don't believe in socialism. These other ones are conservatives. They are complete capitalists. But we have that in Kenya, but we have refused to agree. That's why we start, and then because of that, we confused Kenyans. Now Kenyans always like a hybrid. They don't even understand now these things you're talking about, political parties. They want to see every region is represented on the table. Now that's the biggest challenge we are facing also. So even if you say right now, it will be very difficult because the ideology of Kenyans is that we want a peaceful country. Kenyans want to see a country that is transformative. And therefore they believe when everyone is on the table, the country tones down and things starts working. So they want to see Kalonzo on the table, who on the table, all their leaders on this table. So they don't believe that one person can go and build the other. But you see, these other countries, let me say the way we borrowed from America from our constitution, is that within their states, things work. So they don't care who is at the top. What they care is the institution working. So we must come as Kenyans and say, there must be a way institutions must work. If these institutions work, you can imagine when we were passing this constitution, do you know we never thought, again we shall see a vigorous, you're cutting each other's throat because of the top. I thought when we were saying, oh, we have devolved power, power has now gone to governors, I think power came back. Uhuru brought back power again, back on top of this thing. And people are about to kill each other because of this power. But now let us talk about Jubilee. Because for me, first of all, being a woman, sometimes it's good to do a few things that are crazy. Because men don't believe you can do that. So sometimes you will blame Sabina, you'll talk about Sabina. For me as a woman who has run a party and who has also been in a county assembly, I will tell you, just do funny things, not funny, crazy things like Sabina. Then men wake up and realize, oh, kumbe women can take over these political parties. Because you are, yes, the leader of the political party. And I'll tell you, I was a member of Jubilee. All of us. This party had gone. The days of tanga. The president just left the party going. Who went and revived this Jubilee they talk about? Bituzelachi, Sabina, Kaninikega, Wambugu. In Kiamba. That's where we brought back this Jubilee. It had gone. In fact, if we never did that by-election, I wonder where they would have been today. Wow. I wonder.
Justina, you yourself, you ran for presidency last year on a party ticket, a party that you no longer belong to. What happened?
First, let me say that, let me say what a party leader will say regarding the cost of living. As a party leader of UDA, remember they have received 576 million from the political parties fund. You see? So the money they are using for grassroots is not taxpayers' money. It is money they were paid as political parties fund. So maybe we need to move away and stop being emotional and think like men. The men are saying, pesa iko hapa. 576 million for the party. Let us do the grassroots because
taxpayers' money is.
But they have been allocated the money. So instead of the money getting lost or someone eating, they are using the money for political party and the growth of the party. Why did I leave the party? First, let me say I've always been, and I have been a member of TNA, and then we went to Jubilee. We were carried to Jubilee. And then in Jubilee, you go there, you try to vie because they're saying we want involvement of women in politics. You pay your party fees, but they give out direct tickets without refunding your money. So what is happening to Jubilee? I always clap and say, Mungu halali, because we need to even respect individuals. If you're not carrying out nominations, please don't take people's money. Let us have that transparency. Let us be accountable. Just tell people we are not having nominations. But why did I leave the other party? I said the tendency in this country is that women are seen as flower girls. If there's a running mate position, men are said, bring a woman there so that we have a gender top-up. So a woman is not allowed to have a voice. And when I had a voice there, because I've always vowed to push back, for me, it's not my nature to keep quiet. Pushing back, it became an issue of this is my political party. And that is why I left. So I'm trying to say that what do we need in this country? a party where you stand on ideology. Fred, I've always encouraged you. You're a trained journalist. Your ideology, if you're to form a party, would be one, single issue where you want transparency and information sharing. I've encouraged teachers the same, have education reforms. I've encouraged farmers, wake up. Because I think for us to move forward as a country, we should not have two major political parties leading us. Let's go the Israel way. 7 political parties in a coalition. So that even if you stand for green or climate or whatever, the environmental docket goes to you. You know you're going to push the agenda of what your party speaks for. So sadly, the economy is not doing well. The only place where there's money is politics. Fred, I can dare sell even my house, for instance, to register a party, knowing that there is return on investment. How I wish that we, public or politics, should not pay as much. We should focus on empowering private sector so that at least as government, when you have a lean government, we are focusing on policy and regulations that are making private sector pay government more in terms of revenue. Okay.
Yet we've seen women, Njeri, who've been party leaders in Kenya and who've even used those parties to run for presidency, no less. The likes of Charity Ngilu, Martha Karua. What is so different now that women are feeling so helpless when it comes to these political parties in 2023, when we should expect that things have progressed to a different level?
We seem to be lacking, what I said is institutional memory. So every time we try to reinvent the wheel, and even on the conversation about, should we really ask the question, do nations only thrive under democracy? I happened to visit Vietnam, and it is not democratic per se. And I also visited Bahrain, and these economies are thriving. The people there are they're happy, and you really wonder: is it the problem ourselves? Is it democracy? Is it our institutions? Is it our social engineering? And like you've said, we have women who've ran for top seats, like Martha Karua, who is from Kirinyaga County. And she's someone who has championed aggressively and consistently women's rights. But then we we have sort of like a gap. We don't have now the build-up. And like my colleague Elachi said, if Baba seeds ground on ODM, it just dies a natural death. So we have people who do not really build up an institutional memory where you can pass the baton to the next generation. And that is why parties like ANC in South Africa have survived and outlived the founders of the party. But then even in terms of leadership and women in politics, there's that gap, generational gap between the older women in politics and the people who are who just came in, like myself and maybe the other younger women politicians. There's no consistency in ensuring that we have built up a platform where women can progress instead of now finding now we're fighting the same battles they were fighting. Now we're now starting to agitate for positions and powerful positions in political parties and having a say when those are hurdles that have already been passed. But then because of that generational gap and the lack of intentional mentorship and an institutional memory, you find that every time we are reinventing the wheel, which is quite unfortunate. And I really wish that, for a long time, I think because of institutional patriarchy, you find that women have been conditioned to think that you can only exist in the space or a certain space alone, that when someone new and younger comes, they're going to be a replacement for you. And it is because of the way our society is conditioned to think. But men exist in this space. I mean, there are so many. When you walk into parliament, you just feel the male energy, right? But then for women, it's like if someone new comes in, then, they want to edge me out. And that is not the position. So you find that there's that hostility that is quite unspoken in the political space of women in politics.
Is it an issue of the general understanding of how politics works and the role that parties play as vehicles for political expression, that Kenyans just simply do not understand how the system works? Or do we desire something different, as you said, probably our understanding of democracy and whether or not it actually fits in our needs? There seems to be a disconnect between our understanding and how we express our politics?
I think for one to express, they need to understand the expectation. What is this expectation that they have? And I like that there are two names that have consistently been mentioned in this conversation about women in leadership, and that's Mheshimiwa Charity Ngilu and Honorable Martha Karua. And they stand out because they have been very consistent. And that's what we are saying, fidelity in multi-party democracy. Just be clean, you know, just understand who you are. And when we talk about investment in politics, it doesn't really have, I mean, how do we quantify investment as women in politics? I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about how present are you there when decisions are being made? How consistent are you, you know, when these decisions are being made? And when Mheshimiwa Charity Ngilu stood and said, I am going to vie for the presidency, maybe she could not match the money that the other candidates, male candidates had, but she was consistent. And she went all the way to the ballot. When Martha Karua said, I am running for presidency, she said, I'm going to do it, and she still has her party to date. And when Azimio was considering Baba's running mate, they went for Martha Karua. And they did not go to Martha Karua and said, okay, hii ni pesa ngapi? Hapana. They went to her because they looked at all these years and her contribution into the multi-party democracy in Kenya. And they saw that she has been consistent and said, this is somebody ambaye, as we say in Kiswahili, yuko na msimamo. And that's what we need to see. So if you do not have that msimamo, you run and sit in a parliamentary group meeting of another coalition in complete disregard of what your political party constitution says. You disregard it, then you have a problem. Okay? So I think we need to go back, even, as women, and say, okay, how are we going to demonstrate our consistency? And I like what Mheshimiwa Njeri has said. She said, I feel that we should not do these grassroots elections. She's a woman, and she has contributed her sentiments and said, and she has given very valid reasons. This is wrong timing, okay, for us to do this, because Kenyans are crying on other matters. This is definitely not on top of the table of the priorities that we need to work on. So as women, we need to voice up, and we need to stop crying around, you know, but we need to come up with solutions and run with those solutions and say, this is how it's going to be. And I will always and forever, and I'm sure to many generations to come, they will keep talking about Martha Karua, they will keep talking about Charity Ngilu. So I am actually posing a challenge to my sister Beatrice Elachi and my sister Njeri, they're in parliament right now, and all the women. What is this that people are going to say about them? Okay. Many years to come. Are they going to talk about them as people who jumped and decided you are in one coalition, Azimio, but you feel, let me just go and sit in Kenya Kwanza because of what? Is that how people are going to describe them, or they will describe them as consistent people?
We seem to be in agreement that the way parties have conducted their affairs is not the right way. Yet you seem to agree in your last contribution that probably even for the women, they need to get down and dirty the same way the men are playing bad politics. It's the only way. Yet you are among the senior politicians on this panel. You served in the Senate, you've served in the County Assembly, you're now serving in the National Assembly. You have more experience, even as a woman politician, than many, many others. Do you strongly believe that that is the only way to go? That since the men are playing dirty, then that's how we should do it?
Well, I always tell people, siasa si kanisa. I always start by that, which is very true. You see, when you get into this game, it's not that you're playing dirty, it is the rule of the game. So if you want to sit there and they tell you what they are telling you and you feel it is okay, fine. But if you want to survive in this game, then you must have a stand where you say, when I say no, it's no. And when I say yes, it's yes. And when you are telling me something, and because in the end of the day, when you stand in parliament, remember, yes, you are in a party, but you are representing your people. Who are your people? Because in the end of the day, if those people, if you are not on that ground, then you have no business talking about even these parties. You have to be on that ground. That ground, there are constituencies you must balance. You must balance both. I know many people blamed our woman rep Honorable Pasaris, which I can't blame her, because this is Nairobi. And Nairobi had people who believed in what these ones are saying. Yes, you were voted by this party, but there are sometimes you will have to look at the bigger good. But for me, you see, I did public participation with my people, powered, and they told me, and I followed what they say. So in the end of the day, you have to go back and do that public participation with them and listen to their voices. But having said that also, is that as I started, I said, the day we will change our politics from the regional tribal politics is the day women will survive in the politics. Because even now, even if we blame who or who, what is their region saying? How relevant will you be if you're not with that region? You are zero. So if the men are making sure they are surviving with their regions, you as a woman, you want to tell me you want to play politics of where? Of going, then you've decided, let me move out of the politics. But if you are serious, you want to come back into a political dispensation, then you have to listen to ground. Wanasema sikiza ground venye inasema ground ni tofauti. That is the challenge we face. But more importantly, I just want to say this. For now, I know we are not at a good place. In fact, I know where Martha Karua is, Ngilu is, Beth Mugo is. They are wondering, who are we? Because we have just decided as women to look at this government and never bring even one voice of women. Even one. Where you stand as women and you just say, enough is enough. It's like we fear. We should not fear in politics. You go for your interest. What is the interest of the women of Kenya now should be the agenda. When you look at all these things they have talked, have you seen 1/3 anywhere? That is how you know these men joke with us. Because today, at least they would be saying, even as we look at this, let us achieve what was put in the Constitution once and for all, so that we don't come here every day, Fred, and talk about 1/3, 2/3. Those things should stop. Yes, I know the president has said he is supporting, but in terms of action, I want to tell my president, I haven't heard you even speak about it. And as I finish, I want to tell now the women, even as in Parliament, we have 7 governors. It's like God knew you can have meetings per the provinces that were there. So I'm pleading with the governors. Nyanza, my good governor and my very, very good friend, and she's doing a fantastic job. Honorable Wanga, Your Excellency, call us to do one good women meeting without looking at our political parties. Then we come to Nakuru, then we go to Central in Kirinyaga, Upper Eastern in Barires, Lower Eastern in Wavinya-Ndeti. We finish with Achani in Coast, and then we come in Nairobi with all of them and do a declaration. I just
failed to mention Kawira Mwangaza. I know she's
yes, in Meru, my friend Kawira Mwangaza, and I want to tell Kawira when I'm here, with all due respect, you're my very good friend. Oh, I pray with you. I want to see peace in Meru, Kawira. I want you to gitaa ikwe ndogo kidogo.
And we'll come back and discuss that, because she is an independent candidate and the kind of issues that independent candidates face vis-a-vis those in parties. You wanted to chime into that?
I just want to clarify that the president is actually very intent on the achieving the 2/3 gender rule, and the first thing that he did when he got into office was to write to the committee, where I'm a member, Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. And as I speak right now, there is a multi-agency working group. And I made my submissions yesterday in regard to representation of young women when it comes to the appointive seats. So the president is very keen on the 2/3 gender rule. But of course, you know, there are other people who I feel perhaps maybe do not feel as driven as he is, but he's very intent. And I know that, and I hope that when it comes on the floor of Parliament, that women can speak as a constituency and men can support them, because we also have he for she. And we do not want to leave anyone behind, because we believe when women are on those seats, they will impact in terms of policy development.
Yet there's been criticism towards that kind of approach where women sit back and wait for affirmative action, appointive seats, appointive positions, even within parties, that you wait for until you're appointed chair or appointed SG, and failure to actually go for it. This is almost 30 years after the Beijing conference. Things should have changed by now, Justina.
I think we need to understand that I always say politics is lucrative, because you asked, is it that Kenyans don't understand? Let me answer that briefly. Politics is lucrative. Politicians come up with things, they set an agenda that favors them. Remember, you want to control your base. That is why Kenyans are always saying that the issue is not the policy, the issue is not the bill, the issue is not legislations. We are conditioned to think that the problem is the next tribe. And politicians thrive on that. So the challenge, I always say, we have learned as women that waiting for a seat is not making sense. Kenyans are saying they're not feeling the impact of women reps because they're saying it's an affirmative action position. I decided to go the meritocracy way. Let me do things well. Let me just perform. Whether I'm noticed or not, whether Kenyans see or not, we are changing the mindset of Kenyans. And they always go against Governor ni mama. Oma when I'm president, Rais ni mama. No, let them say, the fiscal policies, prioritization, development, those are the key performance indicators that women should strive for. So that men don't come and say, hey, mnapatia huyu because he's a woman. No, Kenyans are going to say, no, since this leader, not a woman, since this leader came, this is what we have seen. We have moved away from, even the soft issues in terms of democracy is working, the hard issues in terms of infrastructure is working. So I think the problem is that we've been conditioned that you have to be under the wing of a man if you're a woman. You have to go to a political party where Baba is the kingpin, Ruto is the, But what if women just said, fine, we can't register a political party for all women. Remember, there's regional and gender, whatever. But when you come up with a political party, are you involving the men? Can we compete on merit and delivery? So that when we even come into Senate to argue your case, it's not an issue because women ni mama. No, you're going to lay down your agenda and say, in terms of key performance, this is what was required to do, this is what I've done. Where I've failed, I'm corrected. In line with not my gender, it is in line with the laid down guidelines and procedures.
Yes, but Beatrice, now if we could look at the situation in Meru and the position that Kawira Mwangaza finds herself in. Some would say that part of her problems emanate from the fact that she was an independent candidate and not belonging to any particular political party, yet the assembly has members from major political parties. Is this because of the way political parties are structured and run, that some women feel reluctant to go through that, and because they can already gauge their popularity on the ground, that you'd rather not go through that chaos in the party and just become an independent candidate?
Fred, again, that's an opinion. That if you run as an independent candidate, or if you're an independent, you don't belong to any political party, then there's a problem. But I think for the Meru case, and I like what my sister Beatrice Elachi has said. I think Governor Kawira needs to look and just dissect and understand exactly the genesis of that problem. I doubt if it's because she does not belong to any political party, but I think she just, and I'm not saying that she's the problem. I'm just saying that she needs to sit and really understand. And I'm sure I know there've been attempts by even the DP to go and sit with the leadership in Meru, and I'm hoping to see what comes out of it, because I think in today's paper I'm seeing there's another attempt to do an impeachment, to actually go for an impeachment of the CECMs, if I'm not wrong. Okay, so what really is ailing Meru County at this point in time? Okay. And I think that should be the starting point, and then move from there and come up with a solution and see how best that solution can be. Okay. There's give and take. Okay, these are your demands. This is how far I can go in terms of implementing this particular project. This is how far I can be able to go. So I think there's need to have a conversation. Somebody needs to listen. Somebody needs to talk.
Do you get this feeling that probably that her handling of politics as a woman in Meru County is wanting?
No, I think we need to move away from gender in this conversation. You know, I mean, if it's issues of administration, there's definitely a conversation that needs to happen there. You know, who is not listening to who? Okay, clearly somebody is saying something. Just like Kenyans are saying, the high cost of living is just out of this world. We are suffering. And somebody who is supposed to be listening, who is government, is not listening enough. And even if they are listening, they are not connecting to that voice, okay? And coming up with a solution that is sustainable. Then who in Meru County is not listening to the other? Is it the MCAs who are not listening to Kawira? Or is it Kawira who is not listening to the MCA? I mean, you know, they have to work together, because without that, then we are going to see a repeat of this all the way to 2027.
Yet there are sensitivities that are required in dealing with different regions. There are some societies that are more patriarchal than others. And probably the approach for any governor would require putting into consideration such sensitivities. Do you think that that is probably the issue in Meru, Njeri?
Thank you. I was actually itching to respond to Justina. You know, she said that Kenyans have complained about the county MP or woman representative seat. And even from the recent Infotrack polls, where I was actually rated as the best performing woman rep with my sister from Turkana. It is quite unfortunate. And I feel that people did not do enough sensitization onto, one, the financial allocation for county MPs and their respective roles. So you find that the ones who just got in, I remember people were calling them chihuahuas, flower girls, you know. And I got into parliament and I said I'm going to be a different county MP. I think Elachi knows that I am one of the most outspoken members of parliament, and that I ensure that I have brought several bills, several motions, several statements. I ensure I lobby even for electricity for my people. And sometimes I ran even into a miss with some constituency MPs because they're like, no, that's not your role. And I tell them my people need electricity. And I am a member of parliament, so I can do it and I will do it. So I think maybe it's perhaps the understanding and the presentation that county MPs felt constrained. And even in terms of financial allocation, we only get 7 million per constituency. Members of parliament, constituency MPs get above 140 million, and some get as high as 200 million per constituency. So in terms of delivery, people think perhaps if you ask them in Kirinyaga County, I have like 200 million per constituency, because I mean, they assume I am a county MP, so I must have more. It is a bigger seat, right? So that is the issue with the civic education and all that. In terms of Governor Kawira, I've always said, I do not back women because they're women. I back women because they are worth backing. So at the end of the day, we must always say, if someone is a bad leader, they are a bad leader. If they are a good leader, they are a good leader. And the threshold that the impeachment that was brought recently to Senate, it did not meet the threshold. And that is a fact. It is a fact of law. And it was examined. If something is not merited, it is not merited. Perhaps maybe in terms of politics, she needs to understand the dynamics of her ground. Exactly. Because like Elachi has said, ground ni tofauti. And you must listen to your ground and know how your people are engineered socially. So at the end of the day, even as women politicians, you know, I keep telling people, we really don't really have to fight all the time. Sometimes you have to sit down and see, where am I getting it wrong? Perhaps maybe it is the way my people view women in power. Because I mean, they elected her because they love her. She was an independent, or still is an independent candidate. And they voted for her knowing very well she is a woman. So they do not, the people of Meru do not hate women. They do not believe that women cannot lead. Because if they believed in that, they would not have voted for her.
Okay. Because of time, I'll give you each about a minute or so to give your final remarks. Let's start with you, Justina.
For me, I'd like to talk about Njoroge. Her experience has exposed the underbelly of how hard it is to do business in Kenya. Whether she had the papers, whether she didn't have, whether she's the one who owns that fuel, the fact remains that doing business in this country is very difficult. So as a businesswoman and a policy thinker, I think we just need to come up with policies that make business easy. If we are told this G2G in terms of supply of fuel, let us just know what are the requirements. Don't tell me I need to do 3 years backing, I need to show you statements. If maybe I've gotten some money juicy, allow me to go into the business. So let us make business easy. Let us make it easy even for investors to come here, because the problem now we face is that the ordinary Kenyan would want to really invest in business, but there are so many issues curtailing them. Number two, the kanjos of Nairobi are being accused that when they come to get to arrest you if you're selling food, they are eating your stock. So I want Governor Sakaja to explain to Kenyans, is he paying his kanjos? Because this is an issue of hunger, Fred. If they're eating stock, they need to tell us where his stock is being eaten. They should pay their work as well, so that those people can relate well with the public.
Okay, thank you. Justina, Beatrice Gambo.
Thank you. I mean, for me, I just want to talk about the high cost of living, because that's the heartbeat of the nation right now. I believe the KK government needs to stop talking. They just need to just take a pause, go around the country, listen to what Kenyans are saying without talking, take notes, come back to Nairobi, sit in the cabinet, call all the PSS, and share what Kenyans are actually saying and what is ailing Kenyans right now. Come out and let the head of government say, I'm sorry, this is not working. We have decided to review. Forgive me for making promises that were unrealistic. Now I am ready to share with you realistic promises. One, this is what we are going to do. We are going to reduce the VAT from 16 to 8%. Two, we are going to scrape off this money that we are putting for young people to pay for their IDs. This is what we are going to do for the subsidy. This is what we are going to do for the food items. Then let us start on a clean slate. Without that, I'm sorry, Kenyans will continue crying. So let the Kenya Kwanza government just take a pause, keep quiet, listen, and implement, and connect to the voices of the people. Then we will be having a better Kenya.
Thank you, Beatrice. Lachi.
Two things. Just to ride on what my sister said about Anne, and to just really say that when you find a woman in a business that is very male-dominated, then those are the challenges you walk into. And really, I think in Parliament we will want to know a lot about this, because it's very unfortunate. You are abducted, the ship is docked, fuel is pumped out, you come out, the ship is gone, and really, just because people want to, and there was a question she was asked, how did you make 17 billion? It might not be her money. It might be money of those people she works with who bring in this fuel. For her, she's just maybe a person who is in business. I pass the fuel, it goes to Uganda, and it goes somewhere else. Now, number two, let me go to my sister in Meru. I just want to plead with her that, you see, people love you in Meru. They love you. One thing you need to now do is to learn from your colleagues who are governors and see what their spouses are doing. Let your spouse support you now. And I'm not saying it in a bad way. From how, go and learn from Kirinyaga, from Kehika, from all of them. It's not that they don't support within the county, they do, but they have learned to know when you were being elected, the ballot was you. And that is all I want to plead with her, because, and I want to tell her, don't joke with that thing, impeachment, at thinking it is 3 months, 2 months. I was impeached by two things. Somebody just said I went with a first-class ticket. The other one said I went to do my face, to do those things, I don't know.
Cosmetology stuff.
So you can imagine that time and now. And I was not even around, and they decided to change the standing orders. Those are MCAs on the floor of the House and use the same standing orders. And if it was not of Judge Maureen, I would have gone through that. I want to tell Governor Kawira, if you can't see how Waitito and Sonko are struggling to remove that neck of impeachment, stop joking with the word impeachment now. And they will impeach you even if it is 2 days. They don't care. It is up to the Senate now to deal with it again. And it's a drama. It's a drama that we don't want to see.
Well done.
Finally, anything to add?
I just want to speak in the cost of living. And it must be really hard to be president right now. And it's quite unfortunate. There are things I know the president would want to do. And I have had several suggestions from people. And the only way out is subsidy program, which are very harmful to this nation. And I believe, from a personal viewpoint, that the Kenya Kwanza government does not have the luxury of returning the subsidy program, because we have a debt to pay, and that is a fact. And perhaps maybe what we need to change is the approach and communication to the Kenyan populace. So at this point, there's not much that can be done, because it is a global issue. And at the end of the day, we can only do so much and be able to sustain and pay the debt that this country has sunk to over the years. And I agree with my colleague, Honorable Elachi, that impeachment is not a joke. You know, there was a caucus and women really pushing to have Governor Kawira, you know, the impeachment done away with. But at the end of the day, really, it's not something that we want to see all the time, because then it just gives a bad name of the female leadership at the end of the day.
Thank you so much, Njeri Maina, Kirinyaga woman representative, Beatrice Gambo, Jubilee deputy party leader, Justina Omai, politician and political analyst, and Beatrice Elachi, MP Dagoretti North, our panelists this morning. Thank you for your very well-considered opinions on the things that we've been discussing. Very interesting topic, the women perspective in politics of parties. Another interesting discussion coming up after the break, the role of men in marriage. Do stand by for that. But before that, I need to go through this editorial comment.
It has been a very good topic.
Yes.
They should call us one day to talk about that.
Yeah, we
Allow
talk
me to
about
go through this editorial comment now. Thank you. Now, today our focus is drawn to the welfare of private security guards, the unsung guardians of public safety and order. These individuals serve as a critical line of defense, securing various establishments, residential areas, and commercial spaces across the nation. Yet, despite their pivotal role in upholding security and order, the welfare of private security guards is frequently neglected or undervalued. These individuals who work tirelessly to ensure the safety of communities often face challenging working conditions, inadequate compensation, and minimal job security. It is therefore with delight that we welcome the recent directive by the government to ensure a minimum monthly gross salary of 30,000 shillings for licensed private security officers. This proactive measure not only addresses long-standing concerns about fair compensation, but also signifies a broader commitment to dignify the workforce within the private security sector. Accompanied by the implementation of a centralized database for all private security providers, this move demonstrates a commendable effort by the government to streamline and regulate an industry that often operates in the shadows. Moreover, the clarity provided on statutory deductions reinforces the government's commitment to safeguarding the rights and welfare of private security officers. Crucially, the imposition of penalties for non-compliance of this is a stern yet necessary measure to enforce adherence to the mandated minimum wage. It sends a clear message that exploitation or neglect of these workers will not be tolerated, thereby fostering a more equitable and just working environment. As a society, we must rally behind such initiatives that prioritize the well-being of those who ensure our safety day in, day out. Even as we criticize and question, as we must, a lot of decisions made by those in leadership, this particular move we unequivocally approve of and support. And that is a TV47 editorial commentary this morning.